Hey, Star Hunters. Before I get started, I do want to say that this episode is sponsored by both Big Danny Cool and Sean Adams, both Patreons over on patreon.com/headcastnetwork.com. Thank you both very much, Danny and Sean, for your support. Also, I want to give special thanks to Pat Sampson, aka Peppy Pat. Back in the day, I don't know, a year or two after I started this show, I said about maybe stopping, and Pat wrote words of encouragement and encouraged me to keep going. So, thank you very much, Pat, for all your encouragement. Now, enough of that. Let's get started with the show.
We built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. Built this city. We built this city on rock and roll. But my girl wants to party all the time, party all the time, party all the time. Get in.
Hello there, my name is Aaron Moss, and this is the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour, presented by Head Speaks. This is an hour-ish long podcast where we'll talk about the Will Payton Starman comic and the Mark Shaw Manhunter comic from the late 80s, early 90s. We'll talk about every appearance of these two great characters. If you've never read them or haven't read them in a while, this may be a good time to explore these issues. Now, let's get started with our first comic.
So, Star Hunters, this is the 50th episode of the Starman Manhunter Adventure Hour. I revert back to the original name for this episode because, well, it's the 50th episode, and, well, sadly, it will probably be the last episode. Today, we're going to be looking at 2 issues of Starman, the final 2 issues of the series, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about where Starman went after this. So, go ahead and buckle up, and let's get started with the first issue. So, we're going to start with Starman number 44. The cover of this one, we have Lobo standing on top of a meteorite or a meteor or whatever. I guess it's a meteor because it's in space still. The sun behind him. Starman is all battered and bruised along with Eclipso floating in space. There's a big orangish sun behind him, a reddish sun behind him. Not a bad cover. Again, it's still the same artwork as before. So, not my favorite, but, it's not bad. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of Mike Mignolia's artwork for the most part. I mean, it's fine in doses and in certain places. Like I say on Hellboy, where I guess, he made his bread and butter, if you will. It's fine for that book, but I'm not a huge fan of it in my superhero comic book. So, if this had been the regular arts in the book, I would have been very unimpressed and very disappointed in it. For the cover, it's okay. A lot of people like it. Sadly, I'm not one of them. But it is what it is. Let's get, in fact, I almost forgot the stats on the book itself. Let's go and take a look at the information on this issue. Again, this is issue 44. Cover date was March of 1992. The on-sale date, January the 28th of 1992. The cover price, $1.25. The title, Dark of the Moon. The writer of this one was Len Krasinski, still. Penciler, John Calamy. Inker, Roy Richardson. Letterer, Robert M. Piana. And colorist is Tom J. McCraw. As I said, the cover credit was done by Mike Mignolia, and the editor of this was Paul Kupperberg. I've talked about the cover, talked about the stats. Oh, the top cover says, at the very top, it says Star Shadows Part 3. Let's go look at the issue itself. Like I said, the interior art, in my opinion, is much better than we get on the cover. Much more classic superhero, much more classic Starman. Yeah, I definitely like this artwork better than what Mike Mignolia did on the covers. Again, not a fan of Mike Mignolia, so... But yeah, we start out the issue, we get a close-up of Lobo with his tongue hanging out. Just a phoebe I've been looking for. And again, I've always said that, especially when Beetlejuice very much reminds me of Lobo. tweak the makeup effects on Beetlejuice, and I think Michael Keaton could have played a good Lobo. I understand, I guess, Jason Momoa is supposed to be playing Lobo in the upcoming Supergirl movie, which, again, I think Jason Momoa would be a perfect Lobo, much better than Aquaman. But yeah, we get a classic shot of Lobo looking at the camera. He's got his hands up in a fighting gesture, ready to fight. And we kind of take up where we left off last issue. We've got Starman down the ground. Eclipso comes flying up. Oh, he's not flying. He's on the edge of the ship. And Lobo leaps at, Starman, Lord, Eclipso to fight him. And Eclipso pulls his gem out and zaps him. And like he's all, Eclipso's like, do I know you? I'm your worst nightmare, Phoebe. And Eclipso blasts him. He's like, nightmare? Ha 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 ha. What you call a nightmare is my fondest fantasy. Lobo's laying on the ground cursing. You know, the different characters represent cursing language. That's funny. And Starman, he says, is that you, Bruce? And while Eclipso turns to address Starman, Lobo jumps on him and they start fighting. And again, the next couple pages is just a fight scene basically between Eclipso, Lobo, and Starman jumping in, trying to get to Bruce, while Eclipso uses his gem on Starman, blasting him. And apparently Eclipso's gem makes Starman feel weaker. And as Lobo, he's like, too fraggin' lamos, no waiting. And again, it is unrealistic. I mean, again, they're on the moon, or a moon, and they're sitting having this conversation, which again, without some sort of atmosphere, they're not, or speaking telepathic, they're not going to be having this conversation like they are on the moon. So, I mean, that is a bit, but it's superhero comics, so I mean, we're not going to look too much into that. And while Starman's yelling for Bruce to fight it, that he'll try to get him help, Lobo's like, hey, in a minute, he's going to be beyond help. So Starman wants to help, and Lobo just wants to kill. And as Lobo throws a rock at Eclipso, he's like, this should stop being for the bucks. This got personal. And both Starman and Eclipso looks at Lobo and like, who hired you? The turtle. Don't have the hard shell for your scraggly moon face. They hired me to make a crater where your head used to be. And Eclipso uses his gem on Lobo and realizes he's been touched by the agents of the Lords of Chaos, which helps him figure out that it was actually the Lords of Chaos that sent Lobo to destroy Eclipso. And again, Will keeps commenting how strong Lobo is. He made a comment a little bit ago about how he's probably even stronger than Superman, which again, we have seen in the comics Lobo and Superman fight back in the Adventures of Superman comic. During one of the annuals, they crossed over with the Legion and they had a tussle. Plus, Lobo's, I believe he's shown up a couple of times in the Superman book. Is Lobo's trying to kill Eclipso and Starman jumps at him. He's like, not if I can help it. And Lobo flips him. He's like, that's your problem, pencil neck. You can't. He throws Starman down. And again, this first part of this issue is just a big fight scene between Lobo, Eclipso, and Starman, with Lobo trying to kill Eclipso and Starman trying to rescue or save Eclipso so he can save Bruce from the Eclipso creature. And Starman he figures the best way to get away is he makes some distance. So he grabs Eclipso and flies off. And Lobo's like, I hate thieves that can fly. And at this point, Eclipso's been knocked pretty weak, so Bruce is able to come out. And Bruce explains to Starman that how Eclipso's been manipulating things. Eclipso's trying to get him close to Starman so he can use his power. And that light is Eclipso's weakness, as the diamond can convert light into black light, which makes him powerful. And he's saying that, if he dies, if Lobo's able to kill Eclipso, Bruce dies also. And as he's talking, I like this, is Eclipso reasserts dominance as they're talking. And 1 second it's Bruce's face. And the next, the eclipse takes over Bruce's face. He becomes Eclipso again. And Bruce is all, but if Eclipso dies, so do I. And that time, Eclipso comes back. He's like, and you wouldn't want that, would you, Starman? Then you never find the answer to the problem. You'll never find the answer to your power problems. And as he gets up, Eclipso's able to blast Starman against his diamond. Again, those damn black diamonds, which again, and I'll talk about the end of this episode. becomes a problem for our heroes in general in the DC universe. And Lobo's still looking for me. He's got the light, I think, off his bike. He's like, come on out, wherever you are. Come on, you cowards. I just want to kill you a little. And I always love Lobo's dialogue. Lobo's a great character. In fact, I dressed up for him for 1 year for Halloween decades ago. He's like, I've got undertakers on standby, and they're making union wages. And Starman kind of punches him from out of the darkness. And, hey, that wasn't fair. Not that I care about fairness, mind you, but only when I'm the one that gets to be unfair. There you are. And Starman's giving him a raspberry off in the darkness, which is kind of distracting him so Eclipso can blast him with the black diamond. And again, as Starman kicks him down, he drops his flashlight, which breaks. And he's all, stop being such weenies and show yourselves. And at that point, Starman just lights up with all his power. And it's a great image of Starman lighting himself up with Eclipso behind him and Lobo kind of crouching down, but the light blinding him as Starman's all, is this better? Just a great image of Starman. I love this image of Starman being lit up. And as they're fighting, Starman blasts a power blast at Lobo, who kind of moves and deflects it. And we don't see it hit him, but they say that Lobo says that the blast hit his partner, a.k.a. Eclipso. And Will's like, no, you deflected my shot. And apparently there's just a pile of dust. And Lobo, he's like, Starman's like, he's the only one that could help me with my problems. Lobo picks up the tunic or whatever of Eclipso and says, that's your problem. I got what I need. And again, like I said, the light he was using was the headlight off his bike. Because he's getting on his bike, he's complaining how he's got to get his headlight fixed now. It's dangerous star hopping with no fragging headlights. He's all, just what I need, another ticket. Fragging hippie. So I just love Lobo's dialogue, and I think that Mike Straczynski did a great job on capturing Lobo in this book. But as Lobo flies off in the distance, we see that it was just a ruse, and Eclipso comes out of the darkness, and Starman's like, okay, he's gone, and Eclipso's like, for all his power, he really is quite stupid. And Will's like, okay, let's get back to Earth so we can find a way to free Bruce. And Eclipse's like, no, you fool. I've been directing Bruce. I was trying to get you out in space because I needed an eclipse. And Starman's like, no, Gordon was going to help me. Help you? No, help me. And again, as Eclipso pulls his black diamond out and blasts Starman once again. And he basically, at this point, he's telling Starman how, he's always intended for Starman to be his battery. He's a virtual storehouse of power. And he can convert Starman's star energy into black energy with his black diamond. So while sunlight and Starman at his full power can hurt Eclipso can also use that diamond to convert the power, the sunlight that Will generates or unleashes, and convert it into energy for himself to make himself stronger. And the issue ends with Eclipso getting back in a ship, flying back to Earth, and Starman chasing after him. Because again, Key's not expecting Eclipso to come back, just Bruce and Starman. And I like this last page here of, they're on the moon as the ship's flying back to Earth while Starman's flying off after him. And Starman's saying here, this last page, I'm going to need help, powerful help. Right below that says, next issue, Power Girl. Again, a great issue. I really enjoyed the storyline. My only problem with it is the last one, as I've talked about. But, I wasn't impressed with the covers. And I do remember these covers vaguely. I mean, I can't remember the details about them, but I do remember that Mike Mignola drew them. And again, I wasn't happy with them. And I'm still not to this day. But the story arc itself, it's got great art. Len Straczynski did a great job on the storyline. Fantastic. We've only been going about less than 20 minutes, so we're going to keep on going. We're not going to take a break right now. We're going to go move to the next issue right away. So the next issue of this, Starman 45. The cover price was The cover date was April of 1992. The on sale date, February 25th, 1992. Cover price was still $1.25. The title of this one was called Starlight, Star Bright. Same credits as before. Len Straczynski wrote it. John Calamine was the pencils. Roy Richardson was the inker. Robert Pignata was the letterer. Tom J. McCraw was the colorist still. Mike Magnolia still did the cover, and buddy of mine, Paul McCupperberg, was the editor. So, let's dig into the final issue of Starman, issue 45. The cover of this one, as I said, done by Mike Mignola. Again, it's still the Mike Mignola cover, so I'm not entirely impressed with it. Top says Star Shadows Part 4. We get Eclipso fighting Starman. Again, Starman's still in his torn up costume, with Power Girl come flying from the distance to help out. The bottom of this is Eclipsed, guest starring Power Girl. There's a yellowish, orangish sun in the background, shining light, kind of lighting up the whole scene. Not a lot to say. I mean, it's got decent colors for the colors on it, but I find, as I've said, I find Mike Mignolia's artwork to be very amateurish. I don't know. That's the way I describe it. To me, it looks amateurish. It looks like something I would see like on a, like some home press book or something, not a professional release book, especially from, one of the big two. But again, that's my own thoughts on it. But the actual issue takes up right after the last one ended, or shortly thereafter. The last issue ended with Eclipso taking off to Earth, with Starman chasing him. We now are back on Earth. The starship is arriving, the spaceship, whatever you want to call it. And Kitty is looking out the door at the ship landing, and she can see Bruce, but she doesn't see Will. Maybe because Will's not flying alongside it. I guess the ship's faster than Starman is. Because Eclipso is in the spacesuit, so she can't see who. She's assuming it's Bruce. Because again, Starman can fly on his own. He flew it out there. The ship, and she only sees one person, so she's assuming it's Bruce. The ship lands, and Eclipso gets out, and she thinks it's Bruce until he pulls the helmet off. And nice page here on page 3. Nice panel here on page 2, where Eclipso pulls his helmet off, and Kitty screams. And again, she doesn't know who Eclipso is. So who are you? Where's Bruce? And Starman. And Eclipso's like, Kitty, my sweet, I am Bruce. Or rather, he is me. And Starman, he may be back, or he may not. And as Eclipso grabs Kitty, again, she triggers the transformation, becomes Rampage. Unfortunately, Eclipso is able to blast her with a black diamond, turning her back into Kitty right away. Meanwhile, Starman's flying back from space, and apparently still weakened, so he comes as a giant fireball, lands on the water to put himself out. And he's all, thank goodness, Star Labs makes her costumes tough. I bet the patent's worth a mint. So again, on the cover, we've seen his costume all torn and everything. Here, his costume's still in great condition, because again, as he says, Star Labs know how to make a costume. And Starman drags himself to a payphone, calls the Justice League Embassy in Paris, which if you're a fan of the Justice League International book, or Justice League Europe, yeah, it's Justice League Europe, you know that Power Girl is stationed in the Paris Embassy. So from the next issue, Blur Blast issue, and him calling the Paris Embassy, and we can pretty much guess he's calling Power Girl at this point. And so Eclipso has Kitty tied up to that same machine, or similar one that Starman was tied up to or strapped to earlier when they were testing his powers and running the test on him. And Eclipso comments how he can feel Starman, and he can feel when he's getting close to him. And he's talking about how he's going to take more power this time. He's going to take all of Starman's power, and they'll use the equipment they built to test Starman's powers to actually store it. And again, Kitty's all, you devil, and he's like, you're getting closer to the truth each time, darling. As Starman comes flying through the walls. And I like Eclipse was like, you're supposed to come through the door. I like dramatic entrances, so sue me. And again, as Starman knocks the diamond out of Eclipso's hand, so he's able to free Kitty, while Eclipso's trying to retrieve his diamond. Starman grabs Eclipso, pulls him out from underneath the equipment where the diamond went, where he's trying to get to it, and he's like, not so tough without the little jewel, huh, bub? I need my diamond for focus, Starman, but I'm not without power. And so they have a little fight, and Eclipso knocks Starman into the equipment, knocking it off of the gem that he's able to pick up, the diamond. And here on page 10, well, we're halfway through the book almost. And again, the book reads so quick because there's a lot of fights in it, and it's not a bad thing when I say that. Don't get me wrong. It's just I was surprised to already see him on page 10 before our guest star arrives. But again, he's picking up the diamond we cut outside, and we see someone, all we can tell it's as a female from the figure, going, you can always tell where there's a superhero's been. And again, we still get some more fighting inside with Eclipso trying to blast Starman, and Kitty grabbing him, trying to stop him. And all of a sudden, Eclipso gets Starman, gets the better of him, knocks him down with his diamond, starts blasting him with his black diamond, weakening him, taking his energy. And we see Power Girl, she's kind of in shadow. She's like, what a mess. What's wrong with coming through a door? And as Eclipso's absorbing Starman's energy, she's like, who is this loon? Excuse me, but a friend of mine. But that's a friend of mine you're blasting. He's like, who? And his Power Girl just socks him in the jaw and knocks him down. He steals Will how she finally got his message, and apparently no one checks the message board, and half the people there don't speak English. As Eclipse, she's helping Will up, Eclipso blasts her, knocks her down, and meanwhile Kitty's getting a weapon, because apparently when Eclipso attacked her, he damaged the necklace so she can't turn back into Rampage. So she's blasting with a weapon as Power Girl is rushing up to punch him again. And I like this. Here on page 14, Kitty blasts him with her ray gun. Power Girl grabs him, and she tosses him there to Will, who's like, oh, I get it, volleyball. Who grabs his wrist and just kind of swings him around and throws him back to Power Girl. He's like, your serve. She's like, thanks, kiddo. Whoops, my error. As she moves to the side, he goes flying, landing on the ground, and crashes. We got this battle going on between these two superheroes and this villain. Kitty's kind of watching, and she's admiring how, they complement each other. They're a great team. And she's feeling, I guess, jealous. She's like, or not necessarily jealous so much, but, she's wondering how Will could be interested in her when Power Girl's such a great matchup for him. They're both powerful characters, both heroes. And I like this as Kitty's sitting there, wondering why, Will would be with her when he could have Power Girl. Power Girl standing over Calypso. He's like, this wimp? Come on, Starman, you're slipping. And he blasts Power Girl and hits her in the back. She's like, hey, that tickles. And Power Girl's able to get him a chokehold, holding him onto him. And Kitty says, that Bruce said that Eclipse was vulnerable to intense lights. The light drives him away. Bright light, got that to spare. Hold tight and close your eyes. And here on page 17, a great shot of Will again letting loose of his full power. Oh, full power, because he's not all blacking out like he's done before. But he lets loose a great blast of solar energy at Eclipso. And even Power Girl, who's on par with Supergirl and Superman stuff, she's kind of looking away and kind of looks like she's kind of flinching from it. So powerful a blast. As Eclipso's forced out of Bruce Gordon, and Bruce is going over the readings they've got on him at this point, and he tells them that these bursts of power he's getting, these uncontrollable power bursts he's getting, is just part of his body's development. His body's trying to catch up to his powers, kind of like a superhero puberty. And Will's like, oh, you're kidding. He's like, first time was enough. And Power Girl's, oh, wait till I tell the guys at the jelly. What's next? Zits. And so, yeah, I love that they're able to fun with each other. And, again, they just had this big battle. And we're ending it with, that's kind of joking around, about Will going through superhero puberty and his body adjusting to his powers. And Will confirms that he hasn't had any more power fluctuations or anything in the last couple of hours. He feels fine. And Bruce says that according to the latest readings, his body and energy levels are in sync. We have to practice, get the hang of everything, but there's nothing wrong that Kitty can't fix. And he walks Power Girls out, who gives him a kiss on the cheek, the edge of his lips, and I can't quite tell where he's kissing him at. Lucky guy. Anyways, and as she takes off, he's like, what a woman. I wonder why she still lets him call her Power Girl. And Kitty's like, yeah, certainly is a lot of woman. And so she kind of tries to take off, start cleaning up, and Will grabs her. You try to kiss her. She's like, stop it. And she's like, well, I think we should stop seeing each other. I think we need to go back to the way it was. And again, so we've had this big dramatic fight physical confrontation. Now we're having kind of an emotional one. And I like the juxtaposition of the fact that we went through, this big fight with Eclipso and Starman. Last issue, you had Lobo in the mix. This issue, you had Power Girl in. And we went through this big physical, and now we've kind of switched it up, and now we're going to emotional, where Kitty is, telling Starman how she thinks they need to break up, how, she doesn't think he's right for her, or she's not right for him, I guess. And the fact that she's older than he is. She's like, I'm no Power Girl, okay? I'm a mousy little scientist and nowhere near her abilities. I don't even like being Rampage, and I'm not good at it. Eclipse will beat me in a second. I'm not a superhero, I never will be one. And Will's like, I don't care about superheroes. I care about Kitty Faulkner, the best scientist, friend, and lover I know. And he grabs her in an embrace, and he's like, and I love this last panel, this last page here, where it says the end. He's holding her, and the moon's behind him, and he's like, babe, just how much older are you? You big jerk. And so, again, and this is where the issue and the series ends, unfortunately. So, again, I still would have wished that he would have got together with Carol, but I like Kitty, and they do good. They are good together. I mean, she's a scientist, so she can help develop his powers, and I see a big future for Starman in the future. I mean, he's just getting to his powers. His powers are just now developing even more, and his body's synced up with him, so he's got a long, bright future ahead of him. But no, it was a good series. It was a good ending. I liked the ending of the series. They've set things up for go further down the road, hopefully. We have the letter column, and at the end of the letter column, we have, again, Paul Kupperberg saying, this is the end of his tenure as the editor of Starman. Here he says, don't count Will out. We've got plans for him, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. And he talks about where the creators are going on after this. And he signs at Paul Kupperberg, shutting the lights out and locking the doors on the way out. So again, that was the final issue of Starman. Again, except for the covers on this last story arc, I enjoyed the artwork in the book. The book itself I enjoyed. I thought Len Straczynski did a great job in the writing. Again, we got, especially this last issue. I mean, the last couple issues just mainly been fighting. But this last issue, we had some fighting. And at the end of it, we ended up with an emotional story, I guess. I guess you can call it the emotional story of, Will and Kitty. Will they, won't they? And I wonder what happened, because again, what I was going to talk about here, we'll talk about that, and then we'll get to that. So, like I say, this was the last issue. I looked at the DCUguide.com to figure out where Starman went after this. Supposedly he shows up several times in the Panic in the Sky storyline in early 92 of the Superman books. I skimmed through that story. I remember I read that story when it came out, and I just skimmed through it again. I only found him in one issue. Superman Volume 2, number 66, which came out in April of 1992. Let me see real quick. It was Panic in the Sky, The Final Strike, Our Army at War. On pages 4 and 9, he was in a crowd scene. So even though he was he wasn't in quotes, in Panic in the Sky, he was only in a crowd scene in it. So that's where he shows up next. Again, for more on this, definitely check out Mike and Jeff's From Crisis to Crisis podcast. They covered this whole storyline. Jeff and Mike do a great job covering this era of Superman. I definitely recommend their podcast. After this, the next place he showed up was in Eclipso, The Darkness Within, which came out the next month, May of 1992. Eclipso, The Darkness Within, it basically kind of goes over Eclipso's newest origin. They've kind of revamped him, and apparently this story, this special, it's a 2-issue special, if I'm not mistaken. The first issue had a diamond on the cover, kind of make wreaks havoc with your comic collection. I've had a backing board in front to help prevent. I still have mine. I've had a backing board in front of it to prevent, because it was a plastic diamond that was glued on the front of the cover. So if you store it in your long box, unless you got a lot of space in there, it can mess up the issue in front of it. So like I said, I put a backing board in front of it to kind of help protect the books that was in front of it. But the Eclipse of Darkness Within talked about the origin of the black diamonds. Apparently in 1890, an explorer finds a black diamond, which he takes to a jeweler and has him cut up to 1,000 identical diamonds, which leads into the crossover for that year, 1992. Again, in the 90s, DC was doing a crossover with all their annuals, had a big storyline. I've talked about the Armageddon 2001 previously over on Head Speaks. That was one of them. We've talked about, let me think real quick. I've talked about some of the others. But anyways, but this was the one for 1992. The Legion, the Justice League, and the other heroes are attempting to rescue and eclipse Superman. Oh, back up a sec, sorry. So yeah, crossover the different annuals. And the first annual I want to mention is Adventures of Superman, annual number 4. It was called On Blackest Night. The Legion, Justice League, and other heroes are attempting to rescue and eclipse Superman. On page 46, the eclipsed heroes are saying Eclipso plans on using Starman's shapeshifting abilities to lure their heroes into a trap. So by this point, somewhere between the Panic in the Sky storyline and this issue, Eclipso has gotten a hold of Will and has controlled him and is controlling him. And he's able to use Starman's shape-shifting abilities to disguise the fact that he's been eclipsed. And he has the other pawns, the other eclipsed heroes, attack him to make it look like, they're trying to capture him for Eclipso. The story then goes into, again, it goes through all the annuals of DC that year. Starman doesn't really appear again until Eclipso, The Darkness Within 2. So what they did was they would usually have a special that would introduce the storyline, and they would go through all the annuals, and then there would be a follow-up issue to conclude the story. So in this one, this was called Brilliant Men. Eclipso's taken all the captured heroes to his moon base, leaving Starman with the regular heroes. Again, this is the Eclipse Starman that's disguised as regular Starman. Starman keeps pushing for the heroes to invade Eclipso's moon base to get the other heroes back. In fact, Starman makes a reference to him fighting Eclipse on the moon a couple months back, which was the final issues we just talked about last month and the beginning of this month, or this issue. This episode, Jesus. The last episode and this episode is what he's referring to. So I do like the reference to his own book. Meanwhile, Eclipso's learned that he can absorb the heroes he's captured and use their powers and abilities. As Starman, some of Eclipso leaks through, because as he's talking, he calls some of the heroes fools, but no one he's working with right now really knows Starman, so they don't realize that this isn't Starman. Because again, Starman doesn't call his friends and teammates fools. That's Eclipso bleeding through. But again, since no one really knows Starman, no one on this team knows he's out of character. Starman leads his team to Eclipso's base, and as they get inside, Eclipso, does the big reveal. Dun, dun, dun. He's controlling Starman as he closes his trap. At this point in the story, Superman shows up with other either solar-powered heroes or scientists that are familiar with solar technology, and they fight. On page 38 of of Darkness Within 2, Starman gets de-eclipsized. Is that a word? I don't know. I'm making it up. Anyways. A big fight ensues. The heroes realize they're at a disadvantage inside Eclipso's home, so they make a run for it. As the heroes are trying to get away, Bruce Gordon hangs back to leave a present for Eclipso. Starman shows up to blast Eclipso to give Gordon some cover. Eclipso grows really big because, again, he's akin to a god. He's got a lot more power than we normally see at this point from what they've told us now. Again, which kind of a retcon, because, again, he was originally just a eclipsed supervillain, if you will. But over the years, they kind of adapted him and changed him and made him more powerful than he originally was. And so, again, as I said, a supersized Eclipso, he shows up, and as Starman flies up to fight him, Eclipso comments how he didn't go full out last time they fought, so he's going to make up for it now, which kind of explains why Eclipso appears to be so more powerful here just a couple months later than he was in the Starman series. It could be maybe the writers didn't know if his full extent of powers. Len maybe didn't know, or maybe it was just what he was given. I'm not quite sure, but this says it was just he didn't go full out, but now he's going to do that. Starman again flies into Eclipso, goes supernova exploding, temporarily stopping in quotes Eclipso, which again in quotes this is where Starman dies again in quotes, trying to stop Eclipso. And if he was able to stop Eclipso, I'd be all right with Starman dying here to stop the villain. But since it doesn't, right away Eclipso shows up to stop stop Gordon from deploying his bombs to destroy him in his base. Largand, who is Mon-El or Valor, shows up as the bomb goes off and he saves Bruce Gordon as Eclipso is, in quotes, destroyed. Again, second time in this book he's been destroyed. As the heroes fly back to Earth, we cut to the moon and we see a black diamond, which is at the end of this series, or not series, but the end of this book, which leads into the Eclipso series. Right after this led into an Eclipso series, which was an 18-issue series, written by Keith Giffen and Robert Fleming. In this series, several of the newer JSA members were killed off. The new Wildcat, Dr. Midnight, and etc. Also, Peacemaker died trying to take out Eclipso. Again, Peacemaker I talked about over on my Task Force X book. Again, a lot of my books tend to cross over, a lot of my podcasts are crossing over. But yeah, over in my Task Force X, I talked about Peacemaker. He's a big part of Checkmate. He shows up here and he dies trying to take out Eclipso. I remember reading the Eclipso series, and it wasn't bad. I enjoyed it. For what it was. Some of the artwork was hit or miss. I thought it was silly. They brought in these new heroes after Crisis because they wiped out the Justice Society. So they brought in a newer group of heroes to take their place. The new Wildcat, new Dr. Midnight, and they killed them off here in 92 because they were planning on bringing back the original JSA. I think they've already had a JSA series starting to bring them back. So they wanted to wipe out these newer people because, again, DC, especially this time, didn't like to have a lot of characters with the same name because they didn't want to confuse people, in quotes. Also, these characters, the new Dr. Fate, the new Wildcat, Dr. Midnight, they showed up in the Stargirl TV series that was on the CW here a couple years back. I thought they did a really good job for the most part. I didn't like their Dr. Midnight because, again, here, Dr. Midnight was a doctor, an actual doctor. It's the same character in the show, but here she was older. She was actually a doctor, where in the TV show she was a teenager in school because they wanted to aim it more for the kids, I believe. So, but yeah, I'm not going to get to review of Stargirl at this point. We'll talk about that some other time maybe, but it was a good series. I enjoyed it overall. Just some problems here and there, just because I'm a comic geek. But, so at the end of the Eclipso series, Peacemaker died, supposedly taking Eclipso out. Again, I'm sure he showed back up later on. Speaking of Starman, so supposedly Starman died during the Eclipse of the Darkness Within 2. He shows back up later on, January of 1995. There's a new Starman series. This is the second volume. This focuses on Jack Knight, the original Starman's son, one of them. And Starman shows up in issue 3. Well, Will shows up in issue 3, called Sons of the Father Part 4. Will showed up. There was a second epilogue where we show him as a prisoner somewhere, saying that he was being probed and tested. We don't know where we're at. We don't know what's going on. But yeah, we show a brief appearance of Will, saying he was being probed and prodded and tested. And then during issues 58 through 60, there was a storyline called The Stars, My Destination. In this story arc, again, we find out that Will's on a planet called Throne World. Jack Knight, who's the current Starman, we find has been dating Will's sister, Jane, who in this series has been going by the name Sadie, which we find out is her middle name, Jane. And again, so here she's been going by Sadie, so we don't know who she is, I guess. Jane admits that she believes Will's still alive, so she convinces her boyfriend Jack to go off to outer space to find the missing hero, because he loves Sadie, so he's going to do what his love wants him to do. Jack Knight ends up on Throne World, where he learns that Will Payton is being held captive. We also learn that supposedly an earlier Starman, Prince Gavin, who died during the Crisis, was instead turned into energy and zapped to Earth. And they're kind of retconning Starman's origin again for the third time, because again, originally it was the satellite that Dr. Melrose was working on to give people powers exploded and gave Will Smith the powers. Then at the end of the series, it was kind of retconned to say, well, it was Eclipso that did all that to give Starman powers to make him a power battery for Eclipso. And now they're saying that it was actually, but this is the way it really happened. That Prince Gavin, who died during the Crisis, didn't actually die. He was turned to energy and was zapped to Earth. And he's the one that landed into Will, killing Will Payton, and basically taking his place. So the story ends with Will not knowing if he's really Will Payton or if he's this Prince Gavin character. But whoever he is, he decides to stay on Throne World with Gavin's love interest to rule Throne World. who apparently needs a ruler after their civil war they had. And again, I didn't read this because, again, I tried reading the Starman series. I read the first issue or two, and I just can't get into it. Again, it was a darker series. And again, as I said, I'm not a huge fan unless it really grabs me, like Suicide Squad did, of the darker drawn series. So it was too dark. It was more gritty, more realistic, which I really wasn't looking for at the time. So I kind of skipped this series when it came out. I read the first couple and then, it's not for me. So I missed this storyline here where Will reappeared. And then it goes back to Earth with Jack being Starman, doing Starman stuff. And then in issues 71 through 73, we had another storyline, Grand Guignol, where we go back to Throne World. In the first two issues, 71 and 72, our Starman, Will Payton, well, again, in quotes, Will Payton, he shows up in a couple of issues, a couple panels leading an army. And then finally in the third issue, after everything's said and done, Will comes and has a conversation with Jane. He comes back to Earth. And he explained to her that at this point he's two different men. He doesn't really know who he is. He's trying to figure that out. He came back to Earth using a Zeta beam. That's something that Adam Strange uses to go back and forth from Earth to Ran. Another great character. But as soon as the Zeta beam wears off, he's going to return to Throne World. He said that maybe someday he can come visit again, or Jane and their mom can come visit him. At this point, Jane tells Will that she's pregnant with Jack's kid, but she doesn't want to bring a child into the quote-unquote superhero world. So at the end of the story, Sadie, a.k.a. Jane, leaves Jack Knight with a Dear John letter. And again, I'm just kind of skimming over these stories, just kind of a recap of what happened to Will. In quotes, Will. The next time Starman shows up, our Starman, well, again, I'm very hesitant to call him Will or our Starman, because again, he's going back and forth between Will and Prince Gavin. But, let me see. So he showed up in, let me see. I forgot to get some dates. So the Starman issues 58 through 60 that he showed up in, where we find out that he was on Throne World, that was in 99, October, November, December. And then a year later is when he showed back up in November of 2000 through January of 2021. Of January 2001 was this last story arc I was talking about, where Will comes, and he says he's not sure if he's Will, is he Prince Gavin? He's trying to figure out who he is, but he's going to stay on Throne World. Then in 2005, there was the Ran Thangar War. It was a 4-issue miniseries. This all led up to Infinite Crisis, which was one of DC's big things. They had 4 different miniseries that kind of went on, different story arcs. The Ran Thangar War, by the name of the title, it implies Ran and Thangar was at war. Throne World, unfortunately, gets stuck in the middle. And the only appearance of our hero in the storyline is Prince Gavin leading the army. He appears throughout the issues, leading his army as Thangarians attack Throne World. So he doesn't really do anything. We just see images of him leading his army against the Thangarians. Again, next place he supposedly shows up is in Infinite Crisis, which I mentioned, in December 2005. This was called DC Comics Presents Infinite Crisis. Prince Gavin shows up in a crowd scene. Next appearance is in Hawkman Volume 4, number 49, April of 2006. Part of the Ran Thangarian War that's been going on. Prince Gavin shows up in a couple of scenes, doesn't really do anything. Next place he appears is Infinite Crisis number 6. Again, Prince Gavin shows up in one panel. There's no dialogue for him. And then the final appearance at this point is in Superman Batman numbers 32 and 33, which came out February and March of 2007. A storyline called Enemies Among Us. Prince Gavin shows up, again, in a panel in each issue with no words. So he dies in the Eclipso book for no reason. He shows back up in Starman, where we find out that everything we know is a lie. He's actually possibly this Prince Gavin character who took over Will when Will got blasted by the beam back at Starman number 1, like the third retcon of his origin. And yeah, you might be able to tell from my voice, I'm not entirely happy with this. I mean, I really enjoyed what they were doing with Will. I enjoyed that Starman series. So for them to keep retconning it and saying, oh, okay. And I didn't mind it so much that Eclipso came along and said, well, I actually controlled it and I was using it for my purposes. Okay, well, you're ending the series. Okay, I guess that's whatever. But then for him to come along and just to wipe him out completely and say, well, no, this was actually from this, the Crisis, which I love the Crisis on Infinite storyline, but I don't like the way that they got rid of Will Payton. Honestly, I loved the character, and I thought he was a great character. I loved him. I miss him. But that's not all. That's all for Will Payton Starman from what we've covered. I will briefly mention that he does show up in the post New 52. The New 52 was kind of a reboot, a weak reboot or a soft reboot of the DC Universe. We get, again, I'm pulling this from online because, again, I read bits and pieces of these stories, but none of this really stuck with me. So in the post New 52 universe in 1988, the Stellaron 5 satellite attempted to capture a fragment of the power of a totality decades before arrival in full. Again, this is something that supposed to help create, or something about the heroes on Earth. I forget now. I read these stories when they came out, some of these, but this was when I was reading a lot of stuff online. I wasn't going to the comic shops, and I missed out on a lot of this. So apparently there was something called the totality that was coming to Earth. The Stellaron 5 satellite was trying to capture into the power, but it was too limited for the task. It backfired one day, firing a beam of light towards Earth that hit Will Payton, who's walking in the Rockies, and fusing with a strange energy that gave him superpowers. So in the New 52, they kind of kept his original origins, except for instead of the satellite from Melrose creating heroes, it was this Stellaron 5 satellite trying to capture this power of this totality event. Again, we find out that Payton becomes a grassroots superhero, but found himself pursued by scientists who operated the Stellaron 5 device, seeking the secrets of the totality contained within his physiology. During the adventures, he assisted Carter Hall, aka Hawkman, in a search for answers about the origins of nth metal. Present-day Lex Luthor, pursuing his own search for the totality secrets, traveled back in time, captured Payton, torturing, experimenting on him, getting crucial information from him, which Luthor then wiped from his mind. Somehow Will Payton eventually managed to escape, finding his way to that era's Justice League. So apparently it looks like in the New 52 universe, Will Payton appeared in Dark Knight's Metal #1. Again, I kind of read those, but I wasn't a fan of the artwork, and the way the lettering was done in there was kind of off-putting, so I really need to reread that book. And again, I haven't been really keeping up my comic reading for the last couple of years. Busy, my spare time comics I read is mainly related to my podcast. Between that and TV shows, I've gotten really behind on my comic reading. So, just a trivia about the New 52 Will Payton. Apparently, he was born with red hair, which was turned white when he was hit by the cosmic light that gave him his powers. Apparently, within the books, occasionally he appears as the black hair that his newer Will Payton we read about had. And apparently, he's appeared in the Dark Metal and the Justice League books. So I say I've halfway read some of these. I'm going to have to go back and reread all these books just to catch myself back up on Will Payton. But that's where we're at with Will Payton. He's appeared here and there. I did read him in some of the Justice League books. He had the white hair. It wasn't bad. It wasn't, I don't know. I miss the Will Payton I've been covering for the last few years. So overall, I say, as I've talked about, I really enjoyed Will Payton, Starman. I loved his book. The artwork was fantastic for the most part. There was a few hit or misses here and there, but I'm sad to see it go. I was sad to see it go. Not sad. I mean, I was sad to see it go. It's been a long time ago, but, and then I'm just disappointed they got rid of Will Payton, because from the letter column, it sounded like they had plans for him, but they didn't really use him very much. They brought him back once or twice in crowd shots. They used him in the Eclipso series, killed him off without actually killing Eclipso. And I might have felt a little better about that, as I said, if they would have actually killed Eclipso off. But since he came back like with a page or two later, I feel it's kind of a waste. Since this is the last issue, I don't think I'm going to do a Comics Comic Rack. I think I'm going to finish that off with last month's episode. And I think we're going to end the series, the book here. It's been a little over an hour. Well, recording time. By the time I clear out spaces and blanks and all that, it may be less than an hour. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this series. Again, I did the Mark Shaw Manhunter. I did Starman in this show. I enjoyed both books to varying degrees. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I did. Feel free to send me an email. Let me know what you guys think. Again, I can still be reached at starman@headspeaks.com. Check out my other shows on the network. My show Task Force X. It will also be ending soon, in the next couple of months. I'm the last couple story arcs for the Suicide Squad book. But I've still got my two main shows, which is Head Speaks, where I talk about anything geeky. I'm about ready to cover the Animal Man series, or at least the first 2 years of the Animal Man series from back in the late 80s. I've also got my G.I. Joe, a Royal American Headcast, where I talk about the G.I. Joe comics, cartoons. We also do the role-playing game, which I broadcast as an episode. And the wife and I are still talking about restarting back up the Starbright project. It's currently on hold because we put it on hold because of my daughter's band, and my wife is the band booster president, so we got busy doing that. And we just had some issues getting back into that. So I'm working on trying to get that back on track. But check out my other shows, all available at headcast.headspeaks.com. Send me an email, send me your thoughts on the website. Let me know what you guys think. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I thought this was going to be a bigger episode than it is, but about the average length. I can make it longer just by stretching it out by doing the Cup of Comics, but I'm not going to stretch it out just to stretch it out. Again, I don't know if anyone was enjoying the Cup of Comic Rack. I haven't heard back from anybody. So since not, we'll go ahead and end it there. I got a hold of Paul Kupperberg, the editor of this last half of the Starman run, to see if he remembered anything about his time on it. He said no, it was just another job for him. He doesn't really have any memories or experiences or anything he wanted to relate. So I was going to try to get an interview with him, but yeah, he wasn't up for it. He's just too busy, and again, it doesn't really have any information on Starman to share with us. So I guess that's going to do it for this episode and this run. Like I said, hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think. Check out my other podcasts. I've got other shows in mind. I may bring out down the road a little bit, get my life together a little bit more, so there's not many breaks and pauses I did here. But thank you all very much for any support and all support you've given me over the years. And this is going to do it. So I guess for the final time, Star Hunters, keep looking to the stars.